Howdy, folks.
Jane Ferrari here, chatting to you with our 5th episode of What Was I Drinking? How about that, Jane?
Yeah, here we are, episode 5, season 1. Tonight we're looking at the 2008 Nick Stock and Chris Ringland Chihuahua 2008 Carignan, and I've paired that up with our meat sponsor has kindly given me the pork Kassler chops from Barossa Smokehouse Butchers down in the main street of Angaston. Thank you, Pete and Steve. And I marinated one in maple syrup since 7 o'clock this morning, and I've just grilled them off, and we're going to do a very scientific taste test with those later on with the Carignan. But before we get going on tonight's episode, we always do Where Was I Drinking? And tonight we're going to Mississippi in America. About an hour and a half, Tennessee is a long, skinny state, and Mississippi is immediately underneath. And the big Mississippi River goes through Memphis, down past Clarksdale, about 4 or 5 miles from Clarksdale, and goes on down to New Orleans. And Clarksdale is about 90 minutes driving time south of Memphis. And Clarksdale is where Highway 61 and 49 cross, the legendary crossroads that you hear about in all the blues chat. And I was down there year before last, and I stayed at a place in Clarksdale, just outside of Clarksdale, on the old Hobson plantation called the Shack Up Inn. And a couple of lads have bought the old cotton gin. Yeah, well, they bought the old cotton gin and turned it into a motel with 6 rooms upstairs, 5 rooms upstairs and 5 rooms downstairs in the cotton bins. And then they saved all the old sharecropper shacks and just winched them onto the back, the old timber shacks that are on footage. They just winched them on the back of a pickup truck that usually hauls cars. And they relocated them, and they've made a motel of sorts. So there's the electric blue shack, because it's blue with electricity. And each one they've kind of put a rudimentary plumbing system in so that you can actually get an idea of what a sharecropper shack was like. But they have a really cool bar called the Juke Joint Chapel, and the restaurant's called Rust because it's all found objects. And went to see a blues player there, and the guy in the band that was the drummer is a really lovely older African American gentleman called Quicksand. And he was in his Bib and Braves overalls, and I saw a bottle sticking out the back pocket. I said, "Oh, what's that?" He goes, "White Lightning." And I said, "Moonshine." He said, "I make my own." So he said, "Come out to the truck." And I thought, whoa, there's an invitation. And it was $6 for a half pint, or 250 ml, or $8 for a pint. So this is what's left of a pint of moonshine. And this is clean as a whistle. It's around about 75% by volume.
Holy dooly!
Clean as a whistle. And
that'd knock you around a bit.
They call it moonshine because they used to make them. They used to run the stills by the light of the moon without any lights, and they used to test it for purity by taking a teaspoonful and lighting it. If it was clean as a whistle, the flame would be blue. But if they'd used an old car radiator to do the condensing, there'd be lead in that and it'd go red. So you didn't want any piece of that. So tonight's Where was I drinking? I was drinking at the Shack Up Inn, the world's oldest beer and breakfast, Mississippi, Clarksdale, Crossroads, wherever you are in the world. Thank you, Quicksand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, nice. Multi-talented with your accents.
Well, I'll try.
That would have tasted really nice, I suspect.
It was clean as a whistle, and was fantastic to actually taste the genuine article.
Yeah.
Mind you, there's a lot of folks that do it that's a little bit rough and ready, but
very rough and ready.
It was a fantastic experience there on a plantation that's been reclaimed and repurposed, and they're really trying to keep the blues alive. They do festivals and harmonica workshops and all sorts of things there. So
harmonica workshops, that would be hilarious. Juke Joint
Chapel folks at the Shack Up in Clarksdale, Mississippi.
That's awesome.
Where was I drinking?
That's gold. And I'm noticing, and I'm sure everyone else has noticed as well, that Jane, you're not wearing your normal navy hoodie. You've donned up. You've really dressed up to the nines for this one.
I am incredibly lucky. I not only have a meat sponsor, I now have a volunteer shirt sponsor who thought I looked just a tad downtrodden. And this is so new, this shirt. It's still got the tag. It's Wrangler, which is a brand. And I'm sponsored with my shirts now. Thank you very much. The chief winemaker from Wynns Coonawarra, Sue Hodder.
A lovely lady who I love the fact that she's watched the episodes and deemed it necessary to send you a shirt because she doesn't think your windsheet would suffice.
Well, it's a hell of an endorsement because she's given the Wine Chat and it's only the shirt that didn't make the mark, and she's probably one of the most respected not only winemakers in Australia but wine show judges in Australia. So impeccable taste. So
impeccable taste. I love it. I think you look very fetching, and I'm sure everyone will agree. So thank you, Sue. That is fantastic. I love it. So now getting down to business, we are looking at this wine, which I'm super excited about, and I know, Jane, you are too. It is a rarity to be able to try this wine, and we absolutely thank Chris and Nick for giving us some bottles that we can sample. It is a really small volume that's been made, and a collaboration like this is awesome for us to get to see. And, you know, wine geeks all over Australia will be going, what is it? I need it. And you can get it. There is some left. It is small quantities though, but we'll get into that later. But this is Riverland Carignan. And it's owned by the Angos family, this particular vineyard. And if my memory serves me correctly, Jane, you had a little thing with the Angos at some point?
Oh, no, well, I made it through back in 1989, I made it through 2 interviews in Sydney when I was working for Tolly Scott and Tolly to be the assistant winemaker to Frank Newman, who's a legend. He was at Roseworthy College when I was there. And unfortunately, I didn't quite make the cut, but they did fly me on TAA, Trans-Australian Airlines, to Adelaide, and drove up to Berry and had an interview with Mr. Ango. Didn't quite make the cut, but it's fantastic all this way down the track to be able to show you the Eno Curio that we have tonight, because Nick Stock is one of the most respected wine scribes, not only in the country but around the globe. And Chris Ringland and I were in the same class at Roseworthy College in winemaking school. So it's pretty cool this far down the track to have been to Berry, to have been up to Angos, one of the first families of Australian wine. And this Carignan went into the ground back in the 60s. So Nick and Chris got a ton to work with, and I have never seen it before. They've when I spoke to the lads about putting a wine on, Nathan Burley's eyes lit up like a Christmas tree and said, "Oh, I've got an idea." And here we are with the Chihuahua. So,
which is really cool. And it's cool on so many levels, this wine, because, well, one thing, we are going out of Barossa for the first time on What Was I Drinking? But we're doing this because it is a special wine. So Riverland fruit, which is great. They're doing some amazing things in Riverland at the moment, and I think they've really begun to understand the work that they're doing there. They really understand the varietals that grow really well there, and there's actually some great fruit coming out of Riverland, some great wines. So that's certainly one to be watching if you're an eager wine consumer. But Carignan as well, which is not a common variety to be seen in Australia. As a single varietal in particular, coming from France and Spain mostly, but we are seeing parts of it here. What are your thoughts on Carignan, Jane?
Well, it's the thing about Carignan that makes it good for Australia, and the Riverland in particular, is it's got a really it's got an ability to naturally hold its acid and hold its acid well, and that's what you really need. The other thing about Carignan is it's a bit of a legendary fruit bomb in Spain and France. And what I like about this, before you get Nick Stock on and he starts to use his very cool wine word
Fancy
lexicon, I just wanted to say I'd never seen the wine before, and my notes are, on the nose, I've got a syrupy, sweet, cordial, aromatic, power, blackcurrant and berry bowl lift over roasted coconut with freshness that's deceptive. It's explosive.
Yeah.
And it's got core lift. It's got that solid drinking straw of aromatic that jumps up. And then sometimes wines lead with that and they don't follow. And on the palate, you've got this sweet, velvety pillow up front with a power berry mid palate. And it's a not quite fort finish, but it just does not register on the gluggy scale at all.
Really doesn't.
That's why when I tasted it, I thought, you know what? We're going with smoked pork cassia chops with this. Zimmy's beetroot relish as a salt, sweet, savoury combo. And that's why I marinated one of the pork chops in Canadian maple syrup, because in America they do that flash fried soaked bacon rasher. They flash fry it after they soak it in maple syrup, and it's like a sweet salt pretzel. And so I just thought it would work really well. So
it's great. I love, and you sort of touched on it then with Carignan in general, but the acidity in this, it's a 2008 vintage, so it's got some age on it, but the acidity is really strong still, and it really holds it all together. And it is a higher alcohol. Right, and we'll hopefully get Nick on soon, and he'll be able to chat with us through that. But I really
doesn't show it. But it's not evident.
No, I agree.
And that's where it's almost the most important word in our wine lexicon should be balance.
Yeah,
because if you've got enough fruit, tannin, and acid to run out a really well paved road, then the wine will just roll along it.
Absolutely.
Without the glug factor.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting. The alcohol in it is 17.5%.
Yeah, which is why it's got that really luscious, not quite fort finish. But if you didn't know it was 17, I guarantee that you would probably say, oh, it's about 14 and a half.
Yeah.
But it's got the fruit fly. That's the thing. It's got the fruit fly.
And you do see some of those characteristics, that raisiny characteristic coming through on the nose in particular, and it comes through on the palate as well. The other thing that's really nicely integrated and it has maintained is that oak treatment too, and we'll talk to Nick about it shortly. But it's all really well balanced, and it's a great, really interesting wine to try, I think.
Yeah, if there's folks out there that love wine, that really want to see what one of the bookends looks like, chase one of these bottles down, because it will not let you down. Oh, no. Before we get Nick on, can I quickly have a bit of a chat about pork?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so tonight, folks, we've got the Kassler. And I don't want to lose these like I did the meatballs last week. So the darker one is marinated in maple syrup, and this cut is called Kassler. So it's the loin, which is basically the piece over the shoulder, between the shoulder and the hip, underneath the back fat, above the ribs. So this has got a tiny piece of bone, which is the top of the rib rack. And what Steve and Pete down at Barossa Smokehouse Butchers do is take the whole loin as a piece, smoke it for 3 days over red gum, split timber and sawdust. Then they simmer the whole piece really slowly to cook it through, and then they cut it to the chop. So essentially what you've got is the most upmarket, top shelf, super ham steak you've ever had.
Yeah.
And this pork comes from just up the road in Cainton. It's about 15 kilometres between Anguston and Swan Reach, out into Henschke country. And there's a place out there that Margaret and Michael Blenkiron own called Gumshire Hampshire Pork. Now, they've got all the Hampshire pigs in South Australia and half the Hampshire pigs in Australia. And they're
Oh,
easy.
really?
Yeah, they're easy to spot. They're completely black
Wow.
pigs with a white belt that runs around their belly and neck and their front legs.
So is there none other in South Australia?
Nope, they're the only farm raising proper Hampshire pork, and
Right.
they've got the pink pork mark, which means they've registered, which means they're 100% guaranteed Australian pork supply. And the fat marbles through the meat and keeps it really tender. Now, this chop that I've put in the maple syrup all day,
Yeah.
when I picked them up off the grill, the little Weber Q, it almost collapsed. So the maple syrup has almost opened up the fibers of the pork. So the maple syrup and the fat have kind of combined, and it's just made it even tenderer. So we're really lucky that we've got Gumsha Hampshire pork in our literal Barossa backyard. And this is where the loin, and so Pete gets his pork from there, which is possibly why the bacon's so legendary as well.
I reckon this wine, when I saw you with those chops on the grill earlier, I was thinking about this wine and how unbelievable they're going to pair. So I'm very jealous.
There you go. So if you do go down to the boys at BSB, to get some of these chops, you need to ask for Kassler chops that you saw on the show, and treat them like a super upmarket ham steak. Oh, and I've put with them Zimmy's beetroot relish. It's a legendary thing here. Super in hamburgers, and it's a pickled beetroot sauce that the Zimmerman family make out the back of Bazadow Road in Tanunda.
Wow, that's awesome. Dinner at Jane's. I love it. Next up, yay, you're here.
Hey, how's everything going?
It's good.
That little grill up looks pretty tasty, Jane.
It does, doesn't it?
I think necessity has turned me into a bit of a gourmet.
Were they pork Kassler cutlets? Is that what I'm hearing?
That is exactly right.
From the Anguston Smokehouse here. They're our food sponsor, our meat sponsor.
They're about
very nice.
They're about 3/4 inch chops, and they do them in their own smokehouse that's been there since 1939. And the pork comes from Gumshire Pork out at Cainton. So we're going very local on the food side tonight.
Nice. I'm gonna try and get this on the. I did my first ever double crumb.
Oh, yum!
Last night. I was just so nervous, but my God, it was tasty.
That looks so good. Double crumb. I mean, double down on the goodness.
Panko breadcrumbs, or do you make your own, Nick?
Well, actually, Jane, I use just regular breadcrumbs, like some old bread, to start with, and then I did a second. The second crumb was the panko crumb, a little bit of grated parmesan through the panko.
Yeah, of course.
And some toasted sesame seeds as well. I don't know if you noticed those in the photo. They're just glistening away in the frying pan.
Oh, good.
That's pretty special. That's pretty special.
Yeah.
So is this, Nick.
That's right. Yeah. Whoopee!
There we go.
So what on earth possessed you to go Carignan?
Well, turn the clock back to just a year or two before this wine was made, and I'd been over to the south of France to do some stories in and around the Languedoc area, and I'd sort of I hadn't really explored the kind of great wines or the interesting wines of that area. I really didn't know much about it, so it was all pretty new to me. And the best wines I tasted on that trip were old vine Carignan, and they just had this sort of X factor. And I was talking to a guy called Warwick Billings, who was working for Angoves then, and who now has a cider business called Lobo Cider in the Adelaide Hills. He's sort of done great things with cider in South Australia. But Warwick was, he'd asked me to come out and speak to the Riverland Wine Growers Association as a guest at their annual conference because I'd just been to the Languedoc. And so I went out there and sort of said all these things about, how great wines can be made in you know, these areas that aren't necessarily famous for great wines, and I sort of was a bit of a G up for the Riverland to sort of look, you know, find the great parcels, make some great wine. You know, they're out there. You know where they are, but you know, we don't get shown them. You know, and I obviously waxed lyrical about Carignan. So Warwick came up to me at the end and said, "Look, we've got this Carignan vineyard planted in around 1970." And, you know, pretty much just, we don't really have a home for it. It was big going to rosé, I think, then. Angos actually make pretty good rosé, that Nine Vines rosé.
Right.
But so Chris and I went out and looked at it and found a little that we could sort of unirrigate, turn the irrigation off, and then we had to go at it in 2008. And that's it's literally that sort of, you know, story of just going somewhere. Chris and I had always talked about, you know, we always talk about wines, and we, you know, we have a really great collaborative relationship, which we started with Nebbiolo in 2004. So we'd already started making some wine together. And, you know, so yeah, after that seminar where it came up, I'd sort of talked about it. I'd been there, you know, it was just this collision of things that led us to this opportunity. And now we have the Chihuahua.
And now you have the track. So what was it like? You and Chris obviously know each other well. Jane obviously knows Chris also very well. How is it collaborating as a wine writer? You've obviously got great experience in making wine. You make some of your own. Collaborating like that, especially with your travel schedule and how you have to be all around the world all the time. Not at the moment. Yeah.
Look, it's... I love collaboration, first of all, and I always so the very first wine I ever made, and this is sort of going back before I became, you know, a bit more heavily involved in the wine media world, but it was with my brother, and we made some Riesling. Our first release was 2002, and it was sort of Neil Pike was someone that as we were both sommeliers, and we'd sort of loved that Riesling. Become almost a fan and times, and we with him was in love with them. And that time had the opportunity to take a little bit of fruit from the Adelaide Hills, so that's how Chris and I started the Select project. That was on his riverboat, the MV Champ, which is sort of, you know, it's a 130-year-old you know, Redwood riverboat, the old post boat from days gone by. And I just grabbed an armful of good Nebbiolo wines one day, and he grabbed a box of good Metwurst, and we met at the boat, and we went out on the river, and by the time we'd come back to the dock, we were making Nebbiolo together.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
Fantastic! Yeah.
I love that.
And I sort of learned a bit through. I don't know, like. There are some, you know, there are some people that are a little bit special. This is incredible personality, incredible demeanor, an incredible brain, and just such an amazing. He's a one guy. So, and the opportunity to collaborate and sort of overlap ideas. With someone like that is an amazing experience, and we'd sort of already started this adventure with the Nebbiolo in 2004, and that was like it was so much fun. It was so interesting, and then this later in 2008.
Yeah, that Carignan.
There's all sorts of. Go on, sorry.
Oh, sorry. The Carignan, the Nebbiolo you still make, but that Carignan, that's a one-off, isn't it? So this is a 2008 vintage. There's two vintages. Okay.
Yeah, there's two. Yeah. It's and it was really interesting to make it, and I mean, still, you know, when I see Richard Ango, still to this day, you know, it's a thing that we talk about, and you know, it was a wine that we gave, you know, some bottles back to those guys to have a look at, and you know, again, that's another collaborative kind of moment, and it was this guy Warwick, and you know, the Ango family are lovely people. You know, I've had the chance to sort of have a bit to do with Richard and Victoria, and also their father, and it's you know, they were great in that they said, yeah, and why not?
Yeah.
You know, you guys want to do something interesting. We think it's interesting, so let's do it together.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how, you know, that's how all these sort of good things happen. Yeah.
And just looking at the wine itself with the oak treatment, so we've had lots of discussions, or a lot of the wines that we've tasted have all used seasoned oak, and they've been, Grenache and Grenache Mataro, that kind of thing. And this is all new oak, isn't it?
It is. It's and it's in a way it sort of it just it jumped on the coattails of what we were doing with Nebbiolo. So with Nebbiolo we make about 800 bottles. So that is one new French oak demi-mead with nice thick sort of 40 mil or slightly bigger than 40 mil staves. So bigger format. It's almost the size of 3 barriques, but
Yeah,
big,
right.
thick staves that really allow the wine to sort of be locked away and protected. So we put this wine into the same program as that. And actually, without, I don't know how technical we want to go, but just the something that I really learned from Chris, and that he has a confidence in the world of élevage or aging wine in barrel, and he really understands that part of the winemaking process. And it's very interesting today, because today we're in a world that's in a hurry to get wines made, to race them through into sort of released fast, fresh wines that you drink quickly.
Yeah.
You make quickly, you drink quickly, and it's kind of done.
Yeah.
And it was for me, it was personally, it was a fascinating thing to go on this journey with Chris, of being able to taste, so it's typically over 36 months, so over 3 years in this. Sure, it's in a big barrel, so it does keep the wine nice and fresh, but just to see how the wine kind of arrives. And, grapes are full of all kinds of information that in the winemaking process you're trying to capture. And, sometimes they don't all kind of crystallize at once. Yeah, like they don't all arrive in the 10 days or 14 days on skins or whatnot. And just watching wines kind of just even change color. Like Nebbiolo actually gets darker the longer you age it, the more purple it goes. And it's sort of there's all these sort of things I really learned, and it's a pleasure to be able to make a wine that has this sense of completeness, and sort of there's a harmonization that happens through this time where you literally just give it time. You give it that gift.
Yeah. So there's the 2008 vintage. What's the other vintage?
2010 is the other one.
And so that will release later.
Yeah, we've got it. It's sitting in the warehouse up in Ebo.
Right. Right. Nice.
Hey, the question has to be asked.
Yeah.
Why did you call it the Chihuahua?
Well, okay, so this is a good story. So 2008 was a relatively cool year, going into sort of spring and into early summer, and then like the world went crazy, and it was 45 degrees for 2 weeks in a row. So things got very, very hectic in February 2008. These grapes were sitting probably a fair way away from the immediacy of the pressure of vintage in the world that Chris was buried in the Barossa. And we went out and harvested the grapes, got them back to the winery, and we ended up with some extremely ripe grapes. And this is another thing that I've learned from Chris. It's like it's not something to necessarily be afraid of. Although at that time it was like just wickedly unfashionable to make high alcohol wine. And James Halliday was really on a crusade. He was on a huge crusade to sort of push Australian alcohols down. And I just was tasting a vertical of Grenache from McLaren Vale from 02 through to 19. I was just, those early wines were all sort of up in this sort of world, but this was just like there was this storm of ripeness that happened in 2008. So we got the back, and Chris always said, like, don't fight vintages. Like when a vintage comes along that's warm and it wants to be warmer, or one that comes along that's cool and wants to be cooler. One thing he taught me is to just understand the vintage, understand where nature wants to kind of go, and do whatever you can to sort of, give it a smooth path.
Channel.
Yeah, exactly. Do you find that as well, Jane?
Yeah. You can't fight it.
No.
Yeah. No, you can't. And
then you're getting into manipulative winemaking, which is quite against the whole great wines made in the vineyard thing.
yeah, totally.
I don't think we should be shying away from vintage variations. They're the beautiful thing about winemaking, is that you can demonstrate this moment in time, and every vintage can be different and showcase all these different nuances, which I think we should be celebrating, not trying to hide. It's a great thing.
I agree, and that's something that and it's just another piece of Chris Ringland wisdom, and also just his, he has this he's very quiet, just like also super courageous and very, he really knows where he sits and what he believes, and so it's this it's this great brand of wisdom he has about these kind of things. So so anyway, this is the story of the name. It's a really long story of the name, but so we've ended up with this wine that's come in. We've fermented it, and it's 17.5% alcohol, finished alcohol, and this is a world where, like, the winds of fashion in wine discourse and discussion in Australia are all saying, like, pick it early. Get the alcohols down, and then there's this thing, and so it sat in oak for 3 years, and we bottled it, and still didn't know what to do with it, and I was a little terrified. Like, I really didn't know what to make of the wine. So we opened some bottles, and we discovered that we'd sort of made a wine that had such a rich, delicious, layered sort of character, with this beautiful, sort of comforting brand of fruit flavor, and it's like, okay, well, let's put the wine out there. And I thought that I really wanted to acknowledge, the sort of the kind of car crash of sentiment and what we were doing, particularly in my world, because my head's in the media world all the time, so I'm always looking at what trends are. And I was like, all right, well, I think we can go with an ironic name for the wine, and I found this logo, this logo of the Chihuahua sort of crossed with a pirate kind of logo, and I thought, well, that actually kind of would be a fun thing to sort of name the wine, because it is very beautiful and sort of welcoming, but people do get frightened by the numbers sometimes. So that's how the name Chihuahua sort of came around. It was us sort of saying, it's like, don't take things so seriously that you can't kind of open your mind to trying something, like, and that's, that's something that in the world of wine, God, if you're not just willing to, like, taste a wine and
have fun with it,
and to get it at face value, and preferably have some fun with it, sort of, you're missing the whole point, sort of thing. So that's the Chihuahua name.
That's awesome. I love
it. If more people drank what was in the glass instead of the label, we'd be laughing.
Yeah, it's I think so too, and it's the one that whenever I've somebody people, it's kind of and it's not the alcohol, but it makes you swoon. It really is this lovely kind of, like, very silky, soft, enveloping sort of texture, and it's got really concentrated fruit, because there was that sort of dehydration, and almost like the Amarone wine.
Amarone, I was just thinking that. Yeah.
So it's kind of, it sits in that sort of mold, and the tannins are there, but they're very nicely weathered now, and
You just didn't have to pay to put all the fruit out on racks like Amarone. Perfect. Well done.
Yeah, sort of like it's it honestly it took me like it took me zero time to get my head around the sensation of the wine. Like it's just because it's so delicious. And I sort of, you know, you sort of, you talk about wine, you often look for parallels or look for things that you can say, it's like this or it's like that. And you know, it's sort of somewhere between a big red and Amarone, and almost like a sort of a you know, sort of almost like a vintage port kind of style, like that real after dinner. Like with cheese, I don't know if anyone's, I don't know if anyone's got any cheese at arm's length, but it's really, really, really wonderful wine with a cheese board, because it almost takes takes on that role of the muscatel grape or the quince paste or the condiment, you know.
That's right, and this is the perfect weather for it too. I was just thinking, you know, it's sitting cold. It's just perfect to cuddle up with this. That's all I've got.
Yeah.
You need a shirt sponsor.
Or a beanie sponsor. I need a bloody beanie sponsor.
You do.
If anyone out there's making good beanies, please hit me up. It's at Stock Wine. Just DM me at Instagram. I need beanies ASAP. It's getting cold.
It is getting really cold.
We can help you out there.
Oh, that would be so wonderful.
Yeah, we'll sort you out there.
Beanie sponsor.
And quickly, just really quickly, because we've got to wrap up, but in a few words, what's the 2010 going to look like, do you think, comparatively?
Yeah, it's a different vintage. It's a wonderful 2010 is a wonderful vintage, and it's one of those vintages that sort of across the board, you know, in so many parts of not just South Australia but of Australia, like great wines were made, you know, I had one downstairs just a minute ago in that lineup. It's a different wine in terms of you know, it's not pushed out to that same degree of ripeness, but it does have the same degree of intensity, and more floral, sort of blue flower sort of characters, or blue flower, blueberry sort of characters, than, you know, than this one. This one is sort of, for me, and, you know, it's sort of like plums and, you know, definitely dark raisins sort of characters, dark fruits, all of those things. Yeah. But the same approach in terms of the élevage and the wood, and it has there's a lovely sort of my glass is empty, but there's a lovely grilled toasted like toasted nuts, like almost like grilled hazelnut sort of bread in this wine. I really like that élevage time, and that is also in the point.
Oh, I missed that last bit. You broke up.
Oh, I was wondering. I thought I just said something really dumb.
No.
You could have. We didn't hear it.
Yeah, you'll never know. You'll never ever know. No, I said the 2010 has that same lovely sort of warm, you know, grilled hazelnut sort of character, which is really from the maturation sort of time.
Yeah, I'm really excited. We'll have to do that next winter, Jane. Nick, we'll bring that one next year.
Definitely, yes. And you can get this. You can still get this, Nick.
Yeah, you can. It's the best place is the website, so chrisringland.com. You know, where you can find this, and also the Salita Nebbiolo, and it's
under the Project Wines on his website.
Yeah, cool. Exactly. And it's and we also have, you know, we I guess have a nice library of some of the Nebbiolo wines. Like we bottle things in magnums, and so we always have these sort of interesting bits and pieces laying around that that, you know, if people do like the wines and get interested, you know, we can always open up something special. And it's another thing that I learned from Chris as well, is to, you know, it's you know, to put things into different bottles and to have those wines around, because over the years, you know, it's just so good to be able to, you know, to pull out a 3-liter bottle of something, or you know, even just a Magnum. So we've always done that.
I don't see enough of that these days. It used to happen all the time. No, not as many people are doing it.
It's because you haven't got 6 friends.
What about you, Jane? You must have a cellar full of Magnums. I'm sure you must have cottoned onto that early.
Yeah, I've got some Magnums, and my prized possession is a Magnum of Black Shiraz from Rockford that was disgorged about 96. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Well,
And
I'm available. Like, my schedule is as free as hell right now. So if you want to,
So there's three of us.
if you want to chill that down, I think that's
Three more.
perfect size for us three.
Jane and I have been talking.
Christmas special is on the
Yeah,
way.
that's what I was about to say. We're going to do a Christmas special on Christmas Eve, so you might have to come up for that one, Nick.
God, can we just bring Christmas forward? I'd like Christmas as soon as possible, and then
No.
New Year's Eve, get New Year's Eve slotted in 5 days after it, and let's go to 2021 as soon as
Man,
possible.
let's just move on. Let's move on. Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
I'm not adding a year to my age this year. I'm just going to say it's not even worth it.
It doesn't
2020,
count.
you didn't even make the grade.
It is extraordinary, isn't it? Oh dear.
Anyway.
Well, look, that was awesome. Thank you. Not just
Can I
for
ask you a
time.
question? Just like on the 2020 thing, I think it's super cool that we all find these we wanted to do forever, but in time, and it's great that you guys are doing what you're doing here, and I'm pretty sure that this has a life over and above and beyond whatever it was that sort of put it into play. So kudos to you guys, and really, really love it. It's great to see this happening.
Oh, thank you.
Well, don't worry about anyone from outside, mate. You got a beanie sponsor right here.
Yes.
Yeah, you saw it on the beanies. We'll get you covered.
I got you
All right. I love it. Well, let's not leave it too long because it's getting real cold.
I know. But it's so nice to see you. I haven't seen you for so long, so that's awesome, even if it is virtual. And at least we get you in the country for a little while, I suppose. Both of you. I mean, Jane, she was off. Do you know, Jane, I keep thinking, sliding doors, if you'd got that Angos job, where would you be today?
I'd probably be in a BMW station wagon with 3 kids, a husband, and I'd probably be president of the Berry Football Club.
Maybe we could still make that happen somehow. Just for fun.
Happy days.
Happy days. All right. Well, on that note, we will bid you all farewell. And next week we're talking with Tim Smith.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking. It's Mataro Grenache Shiraz, right, Joe?
Yep. And the boys are breaking out some beef cheeks, and I'm doing braised beef cheeks and Janie's loaded mashed potatoes.
Here we go.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Yes. All the yes.
Jane's meals on a Wednesday.
Butter and cream cheese.
Jane's meals on a Wednesday are so lovely and extravagant, and mine are like a toasted sandwich in comparison because I have no time.
Yeah. Well, this is your beanie sponsor over and out.
All right, take care, everyone. We'll see you next Wednesday. Thanks, Nick.
Love.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.